no sign, no gavel. We forgot that stuff in the office.
Yeah.
Just got to pound your fist.
We got everybody on, right? Aaron's on, Lori's on, Jason's on, and the rest of us are here.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready, right? Jeremy? Jason, you ready over there? Yep. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. Start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We don't have our normal paper agendas, right?
Yeah, they do that, yeah.
Bear with me for a second. That's what I knew there. I'm going to ask everybody else they're ready. All right. So, pledge of allegiance. And the next item is the agenda and determination of the agenda. So the agenda was published as part of the public order. One thing that I will pull and move is the resolution. So it's item F that was listed on the consent agenda. We're actually going to move that to be item, call it 4A, but it's after the budget discussion. Okay. Are there any other committee reports?
We had a finance committee meeting.
We didn't have activities.
No.
Any other committee reports from any board members? Okay. So that's the discussion on the agenda. Any other changes to the agenda or additions? Okay. So MSBA gave us basically a script to read at the beginning of these types of meetings where we're holding them as teleconference. So I'll read that now. Just as an opening statement, due to the federal and state emergency declarations, the Minnesota directive to residents to stay at home, and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic. This meeting of ISD 726 School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D.021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Due to the health pandemic, the school board determined that it's not feasible for all board members, the superintendent, the legal counsel, and all the other people to be physically present at the regular meeting location, and it's not feasible for the public to attend this meeting at the regular location due to this health pandemic. Okay. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location by the live stream from the Becker School's Facebook page, and those types of things. School board members are reminded to mute their microphone, and all of the other people that are on the teleconference ask you to mute your microphone when you're not actually speaking. And school board members wishing to speak should unmute their microphones and gain my attention to be recognized by the chair. The chair will determine the order of the board members wishing to speak when recognized. The board members should unmute their microphone, speak, and then mute their microphone or the devices again. Okay? All votes will be conducted by roll call. Each school board member should wait until their name is called before voting. And then I'll recognize it and ask you for your vote. And then, mainly so Angel can see, so the rest of the school board members can understand who's voting and what their vote was. Okay? If you're monitoring this from a remote location and you want to submit comments, you may do so by emailing the board chair using my email. My school board email is mswanson@isd726.org. If you have questions about what that is, please look on the school website, and my email is available there. Again, it's mswanson@isd726.org. Okay. This meeting is being recorded, and remind everybody of that. Access to the recording will be made available on the school district's website as soon as reasonably possible. Okay. And that covers all of the pieces for the beginning of the meeting. Are there any questions on that? All right, so the first item is continuing with the agenda is recognition of visitors in the public forum. So I think we have the Becker enrollment projections and track committee update are the two items. Jeremy,
Yep, and I'm gonna hand it over to, John Powers and Pat Overham, and I'll have them introduce themselves. John has worked on, bulk of the, Becker enrollment projections in the presentation, and he'll share that with us, and that is part of, one of our district goals for this year is the, creating a long-term plan, including, enrollment projections, and fund balances, and so I'll just kind of hand it off to those two, and then I will share this, I hope, on my on the screen and on WebEx. So
okay.
Can't hear him.
maybe I won't. How do am I missing something?
No, you're doing it right. Won't let you share your screen.
Maybe I'm not in charge, or no.
Oh, you should be able to.
Well, this is the presentation, but I don't. John, I'm gonna. Let's see.
Does John have it? Or
John has it.
as he can present it? Yeah, can you make him a presenter or organizer and?
But not everyone will be able to see this. I guess it's in the packet, I guess, if you follow along. On the website, you can follow along and, follow his presentation. John, as you're going through, just let me know when to go to the next slide.
Yeah, so John's the presenter now, so he's here.
Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we hear you. Do you have,
Okay, I didn't hear anything Pat said.
No, I'm sorry, I think this is Pat. Am I on mute still, or are you able to hear me?
Can now.
I can now.
Okay. Again, Pat Overham with ICS, and as the superintendent mentioned, thanks for having us tonight. We're in the midst of updating and doing some planning efforts with the district. We're taking a look at physical needs and space needs and so on as part of your initiative. One of the fundamental kind of baseline pieces of information we need for that is to take an updated look at enrollment and demographics. John Powers with Applied Insights North has been absolutely invaluable for us and our team on many district efforts across the state, and so I'll turn it over to John and he can give you a quick update on what his findings have been for Becker.
Thanks, Pat. Am I supposed to run the controller over here on the slides?
If you're able to, John, that'd be great.
Let's see.
Then our remote attendees can see. This is just.
Well, let's see how it's working. Okay, I'm just experimenting here.
Yep, perfect.
There you go.
You can see that first slide?
We can see your whole PowerPoint, so that slide is very small. If you go into maybe presentation mode, maybe we can see it a little bit bigger.
Hold on. Hold on, folks. How's that?
Nothing's changed yet. It's changing. Give it a second.
Yeah, I've got it here, John. It looks like you've got it up, so once it comes through for them, we should be good.
Did that change the slide for you?
Yep, sure did.
Okay. Technology, just gotta learn how to figure this stuff out. Okay.
And I would just add for the board.
Now, I want to back up for a second.
The whole presentation is in your board packet as well.
Just to provide a quick little background to what Pat indicated, I am a land use planner by background. I've been in the business since the 70s. Most of my work has been in Minnesota. I started getting into enrollment projections back in the 90s, doing work across the Iron Range, which is where I'm from originally. and that branched out then into work that I did with ICS and all of its predecessor forms for quite a few years now. I've been working with them for like 15, 18 years at least, working on a variety of school districts, primarily rural Minnesota, and both Dakotas and Wisconsin. It's been a very fruitful collaborative effort between their perspective on schools and how to approach facility planning and interacting and ideation processes, and my background primarily as a land use planner. And so we work, I'd say, with a lot of different districts, some near where you are, the closest in that area right now. I've just done some other work nearby on the other side of and around the St. Paul district recently. And so it's a combination that we find, I think, fruitful. This one is particularly interesting because if you looked at the last slide, the data back in March, pre-pandemic unfolding impact. And I'm going to be doing some ad-libbing on some of my aspects of this projection because the world has changed. And I'll try to add some additional commentary as to how I think it might impact this projection. A quick overview for you, and I can't, I'm afraid to hit a key here, I'm afraid I'm going to kill my whole slide. I can see part of my slide. Anyway, so urine has increased in the last 10 years by over 8%. This has really been driven by sorry about that one. Too many points. Probably killed that. It's a nice robocall. They don't want to stop talking to me. No, that law ought to be passed. Sorry about that. The gain has been driven by incoming non-resident students, while your number of resident students has actually dropped. Your non-residents now have gone from 7% to almost a fifth of your total enrollment. Your K-5 grade sizes have increased from just over 200 to up around just shy of 220. 612 has gone from 210 up into the 230 range. Key dynamic that we'll be talking about is the number of K-12 students living within your district. Regardless of which district they attend, so it's just the ones that live there, that has gone down by 2% over the last 10 years. But it has popped up this year. So while it's down 2% overall, the trend is starting now maybe shifting to an uptrend on that. That's a critical factor. The second part of that is that the percent of your students who live within your district that actually attend school at Becker has declined from 92 to 88%. And that's gone in a couple of different ways, and we'll talk about that when we get a little further into this. So those are some key things about how many kids actually live there, how many kids who live there actually attend your school district, and of course the open enrollment coming in. And of course you have a net gain, and it's been at an increasing rate. Same clause, good rate. And now that law hasn't been passed yet. To the point where you are now in excess of 400 students in your net gain. This is critical to you. The next bullet there was the one that's going to be the confounding one. Sugar County took a big hit during the past recession and has slowly been recovering. And now you're going through a Sherco closure and the possible arrival of Google, the possible arrival of a new energy plant to replace Sherco in part. On top of that, the pandemic and the pandemic-induced recession. Wild card, fun wild card. At the same time, at this point, the baseline projection, I'm looking at your K-12 enrollment to increase by about 9% to from just over 2,900 today to about 3,200 10 years down the road. Now, the things I look at when I put together a projection is I look at the pattern of student enrollment change within your district, historically, to get perspective of what are the basic dynamics. I look at what's going on around you, because in many cases, like in the case of Big Lake and St. Cloud, the markets from which you are drawing students. It's also important to know if these districts are declining or increasing, and how that might impact on you. I look at the economic activity and the population change and development patterns in the area, and I talk to people to become more educated about your neck of the woods in that regard. And then a critical one is looking at the pattern of births relative to population change and projected population change to try to get a handle on what your incoming kindergartens are going to look like. And that's one we'll be talking a little bit about because things have changed in that regard in the last month or two. Let's take a look at historical information. This is just K-12 enrollment. I do most of my discussion with K-12 because pre-K isn't mandatory, so the numbers are in here, but I tend to focus on K-12. The enrollment, the blue line, has gone up obviously, but the red line is your resident students who attend your district. That has actually declined until it's just starting to come up this year. The green line is your non-resident students, and of course that's been coming steadily upward from a point where it was below 200 to where now it's in the mid-500s. So that's the gain. That's what's been driving your whole increases, that non-resident population coming in. Here are the numbers. And you can look at go down near the bottom, the total K-12, you started just under 2,700, you're now just over 2,900. Your K-5 has gone from 1,225 to almost 1,300. Your 6-12 has gone from just under 1,500 to now it's over 1,600. Some steady increases all the way through. And the next slide shows the average grade size by grade group, with the red line being your K-5 average, and the black line being your average for the 6-12. And you see these two are just moving right, pretty much in lockstep. You got a little dip in your K-5, and you can see a few years down the pipe, your 6-12 dipped just a little bit, and your K-5 average has come up, and now you saw the increase coming up a little further down the pipe in your 6-12. What's compounding a little bit in here is the different grade levels in which the incoming non-resident students come in. They're coming in across all the grade levels. They're not just coming in as kindergartners and staying through. They're coming in all the way through. And there's a little bit of a compounding factor sometimes when you look at these averages. But you can see that these two are moving. You don't see a big drop in your K-5 that's going to portend a decrease in your 6-12 or vice versa. So this is just moving along pretty much all the way through your system, increasing from one grade level to the next. This is the one where we start looking at the dynamics of what's happening in your district. So here we're looking at your resident pool of students, grades K-12, the number of kids living in your district, regardless of where they go to school. The total pool overall has gone down just about a couple of %, but as you see, it's starting to tail upwards a little bit here in this last year, which is indicating some growth coming, people moving into your area and starting to bring that total number of base kids up. But the red line is the number of resident students who actually attend your district, tracking obviously the total pretty closely, but slightly falling off. So go from 92% rural down to 88%. And not a big number, but we'll see where that's happening, and it's not a lot you can do about some aspects of it, but it's important to understand the level of and degree to which you retain your students. So we dive a little deeper into that resident pool analysis and look at the upper half of this of the table, and you can see that the total, the first one is the total number of K-12 students in the district, starting at 2722. And dropping over to 2673 for the current year. The number enrolled, over 2,500 to 2,359. Now you start to see where some of the minor degradations are going on. Open enrolled out has gone from the 130s, 120s, is now up into the 170 range. Private was pretty much non-existent. But in the last couple of years, the Jubilee Center opened up and they're starting to siphon off a couple of kids. So that's why that little bump has come up at the end. Your homeschool numbers, we're in the 80s. That's gone up to over 100. My discussion with the superintendent. Most of that is probably religious education based, and that's not an unusual pattern for anywhere in rural Minnesota. So you can see that in the bottom half, you look at the percentages. So you've gone from 92% enrolled to 88% enrolled, and you see the others have all kind of jumped up a little bit. Open enrolled out went from 5% to just over 6%. Private went from essentially 0 to 1%, let's say. Homeschool has gone from 3% up to 4%. So there's just little dribbles going out on all three of those fronts. Nothing that is hugely important. You like to keep as many of your students in your district as possible. There's nothing here that's out of the ordinary for our district. We'll talk a little bit more about the open enrolled out and what that might portend. Which is the next slide. This is an enviable position for a school district. The red line at the bottom is your outgoing students. The open enroll out has gone up modestly over the 10-year period. The blue line is the incoming students, and that's gone up like a rocket. And your net, of course, has followed that slope upwards with it. Getting into the details, and you folks obviously know this very well. So you're getting kids from St. Cloud. The number started down under 200 a number of years ago. You're now up into the 370 range. You'd hardly lose anybody to St. Cloud. Down a couple of ranges, you're looking at Big Lake. Those numbers started down in the 70s and 80s before. You're now up into the 140 range. And once again, your losses to them are absolutely minor. Monticello, pretty much a draw. Starting to swing much more in your favor in this previous current year. And Philly is one of the few areas where you actually lose students on the net exchange. In my conversation with the superintendent, we pretty much concluded we've mapped these kids out. They're all living up in Palmer and San Diego townships, so they have a natural affinity for the Philly area, and they might just prefer to be in a smaller school than a larger school. The only exchange here that's odd, obviously, is St. Cloud. And having done work in Sauk Center, Sauk Rapids, Rice, Kimball, and Belgrade, and Rosa area, so on the other side of St. Cloud, you fully aware what's going on there as you are, and that's going to continue. I don't see it changing. We'll get a little bit more into the dynamics in those districts. This is going to continue to impact you. So you are gaining students on an open enrollment basis in a huge sort of way, drawing them out of certain areas of the St. Cloud district. That's probably going to continue. This has been a pattern. It's going to keep going unless you enroll the cap. I work in Sauk Rapids, Rice. We live with our projection. They instituted a cap open enrollment. I don't believe that's in the cards for you, but that's what they did for their purposes. But other districts haven't, like Kimball, the one I worked with. They're continuing to pull students out as well. This next slide just starts showing this graphically. So these are the open enrollment out by destination districts, and it's kind of all over the place. The biggest group is to all other districts. That's just a changing mix, but year by year by year. Peaked for a while, but it's now been pretty constant, around 40. Charters dipped down, came up. There's just more options there. More students are just finding it. But again, it's a small number relative to your total student body. Italy has gone up, as we talked about. Might be plateauing. It seems to have hit maybe a point that's going to be controlled basically by the number of kids who actually live in the northern part of your school district. Monticello has dropped, come way down, and you've gone into a positive relationship with them between more kids coming from there to you. You're sending fewer students there than you used to.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Here's your inbound.
Can you just hold on
No
for a
surprise, St. Cloud, starting at a good level and getting
Can you hear me
bigger.
for a second? Hold on. It looks like our live stream stopped, so that's why I just want to hold on for a second.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's not your presentation. It's not, GoToMeeting is still working. It's the live stream that's going out to the public, again, to make this a public meeting. And I just want to give Jason a second here to just kind of,
It's a complicated world we're in.
did you get it reconnected?
While he's loading that, this is Pat again. I just wanted to check, how are we doing from a time standpoint? Are we hanging in there?
Yeah, you're first, so you get time.
Okay.
We're hanging in there. We appreciate the acceleration. The school board does have the whole presentation and has seen it. It's had a couple days to digest it, so, I mean, I understand the explanations and, you know, the quicker we can get, I think, to the school board member questions, the better off we are.
Oh, that's all.
Sounds good.
All right, we can go ahead.
I continue? All right. So I will accelerate, and we'll get to the question, because there's some interesting stuff at the end. So nothing really here is obvious. We've talked about where they're coming from, St. Cloud, Big Lake. The next couple of slides are the nerdy math slides. These are the grade progression ratios. Jeremy and I had good discussions about whether to use these. These are the ratios they use to determine how many kids go from one grade to the next grade the following year. This is the historic information. The far right column are the ones that are used in the projection. These are your resident students, and it basically shows it's in a positive situation until you get to the upper grades, and that's primarily caused by PSCO, which show, the warm bodies are still there, they just don't show up as ADMs, average daily members, to the degree that they will, so that shows that decline there.
So those numbers that are less, those numbers that are less than 1 at that point really is, they're not so-called, you know, not progressing, but they're going other options.
Generally, some are obviously losing, some kids are dropping out, whatever. But especially at your senior level, and really at your grade 11 level, you have a fairly high level of students using PSEO. And the more they use that, the less they show up as a full-time student.
Got it.
Therefore, your numbers go negative. But the kids are still there in your school.
Okay.
These are the non-resident ones. And we basically decided with, in our discussions, superintendent and I, to use the average of the last 3 years. They're fairly aggressive, but we think that that's appropriate given the situation that you're in, or at least we're in, and I think it's appropriate.
Great.
Just context, and this is just, well, I'll go quickly, this is just to show the enrollment of the adjoining districts. St. Cloud by far is the largest district. They've grown by 9% in their enrollment. The next slide, which takes them out of the picture so you can see everybody else. You see Monticello's chugging along. Princeton, which abuts you, but where the impact of yours come up. You see that Big Lake's enrollment has gone down. Yours has gone up. Families has come up. This is where the students living in each district. And this is an interesting one. I'm going to go practical. This is St. Cloud. St. Cloud has about 13,000 students living in the district last year, not this year, but last year. Go backwards, you see their enrollment is only 10,000. They're losing about 3,000 students to open enrollment out. That's what's going on with St. Cloud. They're growing, there's a lot of people living there, a lot of kids living there, but they lose a lot to districts like you. Here's the K-12 numbers for everybody except St. Cloud. You see the Monticello has gone up. We're strong. It's important for you because you're starting to gain students from them. Lake is basically holding even, and down a little bit. That's interesting because you're pulling students out of that district. But we're still a healthy-sized district for you to pull people out of. Princeton, not that. Becker, there you are, 40. You can see that 40. And people at 4%. So we are growing part in Sherburne County. Sherburne County has been one of the fastest growing counties in the state of Minnesota. A topic area for me to work on is estimating births and kindergartners. I use a lot of different information to get there. This slide summarizes those sources. Here I look at your population patterns and approaching, of course. We've got the census, 2020 census on right now. So a lot of information we're using starts with the 2010 census and the best estimates we can get up to this point. Bottom line is, your county grew faster than anybody else. Slowed down after the recession. We're still growing faster than the state average. we're growing faster than the projections had for you. You're probably in the 100,000 range as opposed to the 94,000 range that the projections put together by the state had for you. You're gaining in key age groups. Almost every age cohort from under 5 to 45, 54 groups have gone up in the county. So all bodes towards at least stability, but obviously growth in terms of potential new students. The own district population estimates moving from about 8,200 to 11,000 plus, and are probably around just under 13,000 as we speak today. So we know we're in a growing area. Overall development overview. Bottom line, that's a small town, solid, changing local economy. Most of the workers commute to jobs outside the area, advantageously located for that. The county was hard hit by the recession, the last recession. We have the second highest home foreclosure rate in the state. You have shown signs of recovery across the county that are still not really rewarded. You have all these major developments that are now unloading in front of you. Sherco stage closure, it's going to cost jobs, it's going to cost property tax base. Metal metals recycling and clean, open, burned, open again. Those are solid, that's good jobs to have coming in to help replace some of those Sherco jobs. Google, Excel's energy plant are all potential sitting out there, which probably won't be big on employment, but will really help the tax base. The key factor I want to keep in mind is that Becker Township, which is an important part of their school district, has a rich supply of large lot housing sites that are desired by people seeking a rural setting. I had good conversations with Matt Mullins from the research office, the Maxfield Research is doing a housing analysis for Sherburne County. We're both going to agree that everybody's going to look at this type of housing, but we want to look at Becker. I'm thinking, and this is just purely speculation at this point, one potential outcome of this pandemic is more people may be finding these larger lot housing sites more attractive than, say, a townhouse development over in Buffalo and Big Lake. Don't know, but you have a good supply of them in your area, and if that becomes a trend, then you might see more people moving a little bit faster, potentially, than you would otherwise. So a lot of the growth in Sherburne County has been just east of you, and a lot of that's been townhouse, condo type of development. Whereas you have more single-family housing, you might become more attractive. So one of those things that you cannot do yourself speculate about, but it's one thing I can see hanging out there. Births. This one, I looked at hard today. The black line is the births to county residents, regardless of where the birth took place. It's to the residents who are recorded as residents Sherburne County. That's the historical record up to 2018. When you see the impact of the last recession, your birth rate dropped a lot and then stabilized. That's a pattern that most rural counties in Minnesota have shown. The next three are projections that I created based upon looking at different birth rates and population information. The highest one was using the average of the last 18 years. The green one, the lowest one, was the average of the last 4 or 5 years. And the red one, which is the one I chose my use here, was for the last 8 years. It's a slight increase above the average of the last 10. That, I think, is optimistic. If your county reacts to the current pandemic-induced recession as you did to the other one, there's going to be a decline in births. But who knows? So I think we have to look at this particular little birth with caution. The impact on the projection would take place 5 to 6 years out for the kindergarten classes. So it doesn't happen immediately, and you're going to be able to monitor births in the county over the next couple of years to see if they hold somewhere close to my projection or if they fall off that. And at this point, you could roll the dice as well as I could roll the dice if that's going to happen or not. That's the best I can do looking at that. This is where we just don't know.
Yeah. I'm gonna ask you to pick it up a little bit. Can we take about another 10 minutes to finish this up?
Okay, I'm gonna skip this slide, this is the historic analysis, you got that. This is the future stuff in kindergarten, we got that. Here's my assumptions, no change in boundary, no change in relationship, you're not pairing anything like that. Open enrollment dynamics are gonna continue, the same club, Big Lake, and Monticello providing students to you. Still losing kids to food and to charters. When we come to kindergarten class, we just talked about. On the high side, it's going to be up from what it has been the past 10 years, with a good likelihood that it actually could go down at the county level. Projection, as I hold it at this point, we began with just over 2,900 K-12 students. We're going to go up to just under 3,200. You'll see increases at both the K-5 and at the 6-12 levels. This shows that graphically, you can see the total going up, you can see the residents going up, you can see the non-resident going up. Your non-resident numbers I'm projecting will continue, assuming you don't put any caps in place, you will continue to increase. There seems to be a robust source of students in your joining districts in areas that are willing and desirous to come to Becker for a better education. So that's, as I look at this projection at this point, this is the underlying dynamic that's in place. The pandemic and the pandemic-induced recession will obviously modify this. Probably will be a dampening impact, just stretching things out, because people are going to have to take this. It'll take longer for people to make decisions and to actuate those decisions, to move, to build a house, whatever it might be. Again, that's the best I can do at this point. Average grade size, you can ignore that. Summary statement, you're going to go up. As this enrollment projection holds, it's 9%. Will be dampened down, just and stretched out because of the recession. Your resident student is going to continue, but you're going to have more kids living in your area. Your non-resident is going to increase. They're going to be, they'll go from a fifth to maybe just under a quarter of their enrollment. Your grade sizes are going up accordingly. Using a projection. It's not a prediction, it's projection, it's built on assumptions, and we just talked about some of those assumptions might be at risk. The key things for you to do is the very last bullet, monitor your annual birth rates. You can get the information from the state health department to see if there's significant deviations on the number of births in Shelburne County. That'll be your tip-off 5 to 6 years down the pike as to what might be happening in the county or in your district. All right, I'm gaming.
Questions?
How do those numbers, how do we prepare building?
Yeah.
Well, building-wise, are we prepared for those types of projections?
Yeah, and that's the second part of this study.
Okay.
So that'll be the part that comes up with Pat and some of that, what he's looking into.
And I can actually give you just a 30-second response to that. The first thing we're doing is we've got the baseline information, so we know where enrollment is going. Like the superintendent just mentioned, we're literally in the process of doing capacity analysis on each of the buildings. We know, based on history and just intuitively, that obviously the primary is busting at the seams right now. The middle school is also at capacity. The high school, we know we do have some room, and the intermediate has a couple years worth of space, but we're going to quantify those for you exactly and bring those back to you here in a few weeks so that we can go through some options and scenarios with you.
Fair enough.
So that's as far as from a building standpoint, from a, facilities, that kind of stuff. Is that just classroom space, or does it include, activities and those types of things? I think about the use of the PAC, auditorium space, that kind of stuff. Is that included as part of your analysis, or is that completely separate?
Yep, good question. So we've got, the short answer is it is included. We've got the traditional educational spaces, the classroom spaces. We've got the core areas of the buildings, which include gyms and cafeterias and media centers and corridors and kind of the support functions. And then we have some of the specialty or assembly spaces like you talked about, the PAC and the little, there's the smaller venue at the high school. There's the multi-purpose room over at the intermediate, right? And there are areas, we're going through every building and we're looking not only for what the current capacities are, but we're looking for spaces that might be underutilized currently, and how can we better leverage those before we ever consider modifying or adding anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does, thank you. Connie, anything? No? No. Lori, Aaron, Jason? Silence is...
No.
No questions. All right, so this is good, a lot of good information, a lot of things kind of looking at. It does, one of the things that just hits my mind when I see a whole bunch of kids open enrolling in is that that's parents and families shopping for school districts. And so it looks like we're delivering some of the things that they're looking for, which means that they're generally open enrolling in. So those are some of the things that we have to, I think, continue to keep the focus on is, how do we, what are the right things that we're doing, and continue to do those things to make sure that people are wanting to come here, even when they don't live in our district. We also, though, have to understand that there might be some tax monies and transfers, and continue to talk about, to our legislators and so forth, is that when we have this net open enrollment in, we need to understand how that impacts budgeting, those types of things. We do get some numbers from ADM, but, there's some other pieces that need to be considered. Okay? Anything else?
Good. Nope, I think that's,
all right,
hit it right on the head.
we're onto the track, right?
Yep. How do we do that, Jason? Thank you,
ICS?
Pat and John. And,
Yep, thank you guys.
You guys can drop off. I think.
Appreciate the opportunity to help you.
Yeah. Thanks. So is it Chantel presenting?
So I'm just I can X out of it then, right?
Well, looks like Jason gave her.
Oops.
I gave Chantel the. Chantel, you need to unmute so we can hear you, or who's talking?
Sorry about that. I was having some issues with the internet.
Wonderful.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I will share my screen, and we will be doing a presentation on TRAC. We have members of TRAC here tonight, and we have Connie as part of TRAC, along with Brian Balloon, Dale Christensen, and Victoria Johannes is here, and we create a little video clip that is on. You hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Good evening, school board members. This is Chantel Boyer, and I will be doing the presentation on TRAC, Together Reading Area Kids. Brian Balloon, high school assistant principal, Dale Christensen, primary principal, and Victoria Johannes, Sherburne County Health and Human Services, along with myself, put together this presentation for you this evening. TRAC is a committee that was formed in 2014 as a response to recent concerns for the youth in the Becker community. Members include Becker school staff, Becker school board members, Dylan's Hope Foundation, parents, students, mental health professionals, the Becker Police Department, Sherburne County Probation, spiritual leaders, Sherburne County Health and Human Services, and city officials. The mission statement of TRAC is to foster a safe and healthy environment for the Becker community by promoting mental health and resiliency. TRAC does collect data to see what our needs are within the Becker youth. We collect data every few years. We first started this, as you know, in 2014. The data that's collected is through the Search Institute, which created the developmental asset surveys. We collect this data every couple years, and it focuses around the 40 developmental assets. Gretchen Bordson and Heather Eigen created a video with students explaining the developmental assets back in 2014.
The Search Institute has identified 40 developmental assets as building blocks of healthy development. These assets help young children grow up healthy, caring, and responsible. There are both external and internal assets. External assets tell us about the needs that young people have for support from adults in their communities and what activities they need to develop boundaries in their lives. Internal assets tell us about the values that affect their behavior and the things that they really care about and are committed to.
Asset number 1, I get lots of family support. Asset number 4, I go to school where the teachers care about me. Asset number 25, I like to read books in my spare time. Asset 30, I became a crossing guard to help other students get to school safely. Asset 16, my parents and teachers expect big things from me.
We mentor students at the primary school because we want to help others.
Asset number 6, our moms are involved in our schools. Asset number 15, I hang out with friends who help me stay true to who I am.
Asset number 23,
I work hard to make sure my homework is done.
and I'm prepared for the next day.
Asset number 17, I spend time involved in the arts, music, and theater. Asset number 18, I spend a lot of my time working hard to improve my skills in sports. Asset number 9, we've served our community by helping to organize a blood drive. We've collected 83 units of blood.
Asset number 32, I got involved in robotics to help prepare me for a career in engineering.
Asset number 14, I have a lot of positive adult role models in my life.
Asset number 28, I have integrity and stand up for what I believe in.
Asset number 19, I spend time every week growing in my faith. Asset number 40,
We are excited to graduate from high school and we are looking forward to our future.
the Search Institute has found that kids with 10 or fewer assets are more likely to engage in high-risk behavior, such as the use of alcohol or other drugs, violence, problems in school, sexual activity, and gambling. They are also less likely to engage in positive behaviors, such as success in school, maintaining good health, and valuing diversity. In contrast, young people with many assets, more than 30, are much less likely to engage in high-risk behaviors. They are significantly more likely to engage in positive behaviors like school success. This research isn't about pointing fingers. It's about taking action and looking at what you and I can do to make a difference. It's about asking parents, teachers, community members, and faith leaders to take action to help kids succeed. It's also about asking kids to take responsibility for their own actions as an investment in their future.
Fun to see some of those students that have graduated and moved on to different things in their life. So based on the developmental asset survey that we provided to students back in November of 2018, we find the areas of strength are within our school, our family, support, boundaries and expectations, and we continue to look at areas of growth within the community, personal, positive identity, and constructive use of time. This is students, again, that take this developmental asset survey who are in grades 4 through 12. Track has been involved in a number of things over the past few years. We worked with Dylan's Hope during the annual golf tournament, and this allows for the presentations that we have in the fall at school. This past fall, we had Terrence Talley come and present to our students during the day, and students and community members that evening. We also have, we work with a mental health and wellness fair that is provided before the mental health presentation each fall, and we have had a great turnout over the past few years with that. We, of course, give the developmental asset survey. We have created and distributed asset cards when they are just really focusing on what we can do to help our youth within our community, what drivers can do, what businesses could do, child care providers, coaches, community members and parents, faith-based organizations, healthcare professionals, law enforcement, school staff, senior citizens, teenagers and youth. And so this is something that we have provided to people over the years, over the past couple years. We're involved in the track scholarship. We provide 2 scholarships, $500 to our seniors who are graduating, and we ask them to write a mental health essay on how to continue to meet the needs of our students within the community. We also take that information in after the essays are written and just really to dig into what we can continue to do to help our Becker youth. We work closely with the community members. We have a social media, we have a Facebook page, and we have student representation on the track committee. This past year, we've had the Bounce Back group come in and talk to us about Bounce Back and what their focus is on promoting health through happiness. We were fortunate to have individuals from the Bounce Back Project come in and speak to us to see what we can do. The Bounce Back also presented at the Chamber of Commerce this past winter. This past winter and into the spring, we were looking at just how are we going to promote happiness, promote kindness. I know the high school did a kindness bingo this past February, and interaction between staff and students, kindness, appreciation. We were planning, the track committee was actually planning a Pay It Forward Day on April 28th, and we were working with the elementaries and the secondary schools to look at how we could continue to pay it forward with kindness. And we had some strips that actually focused on what students and what community members could do in regards to pay it forward. We are looking at the coming November, the mayor is looking at a kindness week and how we could do that within our community. Again, promoting kindness and focusing on meeting the needs of all our community members. That is all that we have for you with track. If there's any questions, we would be happy to answer them. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. Our track committee representatives that have created this Google slide includes Brian, myself, Dale, and Victoria. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. I'll start off, this is Mark, I'll start off the question. So, Project Bounce Back, is that with Centricare? So that's Centricare Health and their Project Bounce Back. I know they've been doing work in Monticello and Big Lake, and to ask them, because I serve on the Monticello Hospital Board, ask them to continue to be involved with the Becker schools in getting that. So I'm glad to see that we've connected that piece and that kind of stuff. I feel a little bit left out because there wasn't wasn't a card made for what can the school board do for us. But I'll leave that to you guys and those types of things. Other questions from the board members?
You must hit one of the other categories though, right?
Probably. Any questions, school board members? I know Connie, you serve on that committee, and Ryan, you've been involved with it for a long time.
Yeah, Dylan was kind of the onset of how track got started anyway, so I served on the committee on the onset, and now I'm kind of a representative through Dylan's Hope, not technically on the committee itself, but we help, donate to the school to help with the mental health stuff, the track scholarships, and anything else the presentations, like Chantel said, to keep kids engaged.
For me, honestly, one of the things we're seeing there is the surveys and stuff that they do with that interaction and figuring out what the assets are for that particular league, things we're doing well and things we need to improve on. That same kind of thing, I think, could be in our goal-setting process as well, as we're looking at some of the pieces that track is looking at, that might help us also aim some supporting goals or something there that we could do, I would think. Okay. Lori, Aaron, Jason, anything?
I don't have any questions. I just really appreciate the work that's being done. It's been a great addition to the district.
Yeah, no doubt fulfilling part of our mission in creating self-directed learners. That mental health piece is a key aspect of it.
Well, it's a great group because of I don't know what word to use, but the difference, all the different people and backgrounds of all the people, including students that are on it. So it's nice to be able to get that community-school relationship strengthened and then do something good for the kids as well.
All right, if there's nothing else, we can move on to superintendent's report.
All right. Thank you, and
thank you,
Mr. Balloon. I think he's going to go start lighting up the lights here pretty soon. And,
oh yeah, if you're out there, it's 2020. You go out to the football field and 20 minutes, 20 seconds out there, the lights are on, and they read the names and so forth. I was there last week, so go out there and participate if you can.
I want to just start off my report with thanking Pat and John again. I know they're not on there anymore, but and then also the track committee for putting that together. I have Staff Appreciation Week on my report. So this week we are having Staff Appreciation Week from May 4th to the 8th. One of the things we did today was for all staff, we had bagels and cream cheese available to them. And so we did a drive up, just like we do for the lunches, at the PAC entrance, and we had a number of people. I don't think anyone counted, I guess, but we had a number of people come through the drive-through. We have on Friday we're going to do root beer floats and cookies for staff. Again, a drive up model. We have this week on our social media we have teachers being recognized today on Monday. Tuesday is the paras. Wednesday is the bus drivers and secretaries. Thursday will be food service. Friday will be the custodians. And so each day we'll change our profile picture to match that, and then we'll put we have a little write-up for each of them. It's Teacher Appreciation Week according to I believe NEA. We have decided to bulk it all together so we get them all at the same time, and we weren't planning on doing it this way, but that's the way it's working, and I thought we have some really good things. If people want to be out in the community and appreciate staff, they can do blue ribbons, they can do make signs and put them in their yard, they can do a number of things, and using social media as well. Some people put some stories on there. I shared a story about one of my teachers today on Facebook, and I plan on doing some of that for some other people that affected my life growing up as well. The survey results from parents that we sent out for K through 12 as part of a requirement for distance learning had some learning things on there, some very good things as well. I believe our staff has done a wonderful job. Some of the numbers that I've shared, we have 1,073 respondents. The survey is now closed, but we have 1,073 responses. We have about 57% of the students, K through 12, it was fairly equal. The building breakdown was very equal as far as almost 25% from K2, 3, 5, 4, 6, and 9 through 12. But about 57% are saying they're spending about 6 to 15 hours on schoolwork per week. 70% of those parents said that that's about right. Some were spending more and some were spending less. It's a pretty wide, range, but the ones that had more said it was too much, and the ones that had less said they could use it more for the most part. 64% of the parents are helping about 1 to 3 hours, per day on homework. And so again, that one kind of was greater at the lower levels, of course, and lower at the higher levels. And then we have, as far as the quality of lessons and quality of homework, about 87% of people who filled out the survey gave an A or a B on the quality of lessons and quality of homework, and then 80% gave an A or B on the online experience. And in speaking to teachers, and I mentioned this today at a meeting with teachers earlier, we were thrown into this. Obviously, this wasn't something we really planned for. We had the 8 days of planning, of course, but we're not really trained in this type of learning and this type of teaching, and I really think our teachers have really stepped up their game. The support staff has stepped up. Obviously, the bus drivers are doing the deliveries and doing the child care and things like that. So it was good to see that. I think we obviously have some room to grow, and we don't know what to expect going forward, even in the fall, and we have a little bit more time to plan for that, hopefully, than we did in the past. But the results of the survey were pretty good. And I've said all along, we're in a different spot than a lot of school districts because we have one-to-one devices. We've given out some other hotspots to people who need internet access and things like that, and so we have very few. I believe our number is one family that is unable to get internet access, and everyone has a device, and so we're way ahead of the curve, and we have the luxury of that taking place. Now, that's not saying everybody has full broadband 24/7 with 8 people in their house all on their devices, but
dropping it all and keep
yeah,
one connection, yeah.
But they do have access, and we can reach out to them, so that's been
So
good.
that's one family in the entire district?
From what we know, yeah, and what I've have, yeah.
Wow.
So if you know anybody else out there that for some reason doesn't have a connection, now again, not saying that it's a perfect connection.
Right, but a connection.
Yep. And we have hotspots available for them. We have one family just moved in Friday to the district, and so we gave them a hotspot. So their internet's not getting hooked up till tomorrow, I believe, or sometime in the future. I guess I already have that track committee and John Powers and Pat, thank them. In addition to the John Powers, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, staff are working with a plan and thoughts on facilities. That's with Pat Overham. Both of these presentations will go to the school board, and again, to meet our goal of developing a long-term facilities plan, considering the student enrollment and bond debt levies as well. And so look for Pat, and Mark Lenz has been working with him on either presenting in June at our June board meeting, or that first week, well, probably second week in July, whenever our July board meeting is. So they're working on that right now.
So I just have a question on the distance learning plan. So the state of Minnesota gave last Friday and Monday today as kind of additional planning days, and there's supposed to be an update published to the distance learning plan by the end of the day tomorrow.
Yep.
We have some updates we're making to the plan.
We've had updates we've been making to the plan along the way.
Along the way.
So it's a Google Doc that we use that turns into a live document uneditable document online. So the steps that we've been taking along the way have been on there. They've given us Friday and Monday to do some staff development. The MD's given us some webinars and some trainings and things like that. They're also on there as well. So yeah, so our distance learning plan is updating some of those. Again, we don't have as much of a concern with connectivity as we had earlier. We had 283, I think, was the highest number we had, but that's not as big of an issue in our plan anymore. So.
To me, overall, it sounds like, you know, we're doing pretty good. You know, 3/4 or so, a little more maybe, are pretty happy with what we're doing, but that leaves that 20%, you know, a quarter of the people that still are having some issues and maybe some additional improvements we can do. So the mechanism for feedback from people is what? The teachers and the principals?
Still through the teachers, yep. Do some feedback to them if they're having trouble with that. Go through the principals. Obviously, we use that survey to guide some of our stuff. The staff, what we did with the survey, the 1,000 responses, is we broke them into each building, so the principals shared that information with staff on Friday or Monday. And so the teachers were aware of it as well in their trainings the last couple of days. Like I said, the MDE is doing some webinars, and they're talking about relationships a lot on there. We've talked a lot about that in our admin meetings, how we can continue to take care of social emotional learning pieces for students, as well as staff members. So when they do their staff meetings, they use the principals. I've seen them model some of those tactics as well. So
The webinars that MDE is doing, that's for staff?
yes, yep, it's for staff. They've had some trouble. So Friday I signed up for them. The first two didn't work. The third one did, but it was focused on a different group. But they're getting them, and then there'll be recordings that'll be out there. And we've shared some of those as well with staff, and staff could have jumped on Friday and Monday. They had some time to do that with their planning time as well. So, but a bulk of those are on social emotional learning. There's other ones on equity, so making sure we're reaching all of our students, regardless of their status, I guess. And so that's all what a bulk of their trainings are on. We also been doing some trainings within our staff, so the principals have led some building, and they've shared all the information we have right now, and we're still getting more and more information, and it's continually changing, but that's out there.
Questions? Give you guys a couple seconds online if you have any questions to unmute yourself and ask them.
And I was going to talk about graduation on here, but since that's a topic before we get to that meeting part down there, I'll add that in there.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess one of the other things that I would have that kind of comes up for me is that one of the things we talked about back when this was all kind of kicking off in our initial plans and just starting that thing was about, maintaining a lot of flexibility. And I got chastised a little bit about the number of times that I talked about being, flexible to be flexible and, with some flexibility. I understand that, and that's where we were at when we kind of started this. Now we're kind of firming things up more. It seems to me like we're moving back towards, ratcheting and understand that, students have expectations, completing assignments before the end of the school year, completing graduation requirements, all of those types of things are coming more to the forefront, is kind of what I see too of this, kind of the next phase of the distance learning plan until the end of this academic school year. Am I interpreting that right?
Yep, and I think that's one of the things we'll focus on for the next 15, 20 days we have left of school. Is part of that, we really, on, I think it was last Wednesday or Thursday, we had an admin meeting, and we talked about making sure we have that, we're reaching the mental health of people and being able to take care of the needs of the students and staff. And so that's the focus of what they did Friday and Monday. Again, we take baby steps as we continue to learn and progress through this entire thing, and some of that is that flexibility, but being able to rein it in so that students aren't taking advantage of teachers, and that we're managing our teacher workloads and things like that. So principals that are on here, you hear that now. We're going to talk about that very soon. So,
well, I know, like everybody else, now that a lot of people are working from home, it's very difficult to separate your home life from your work life. I think we're all experiencing that, and that's a mental health piece as well. And the computer is there in front of you, your cell phone is there in front of you, and you're kind of always on, so to speak, right?
Yep.
And so, but I think we all, for our own mental health, have some boundaries that we need to understand there. If we were normally in the classroom, you would expect it to be in class from 8:05 or 8:10 until 3:10 or whatever it is. I mean, those hours, right? You would be expected to be in class, and if you weren't doing your schoolwork, you would be absent. I mean, these are things I talk about with my own student and those types of things, to understand that you have a responsibility as a student not to put it off until after dinner or those types of things. Now, there are some exceptions, and, you know, we do need to understand that some people are essential workers and all those other types of things. But for the most part, it should be moving back into the regular routine of going to school, getting your schoolwork done, you know, communicating issues with teachers during a normal school day, all of those types of things, right?
Yes, yep, exactly.
And, you know, I'm just saying this stuff out loud of the things that I'm thinking, the things I'm running into with my students. I'm sure you guys have some, you know, similar examples of those types of things in your own households and that kind of stuff. Again, we know how difficult this is, and we're trying to work through all of those issues. The thing that I would emphasize is communicating those issues, and that's why I wanted to bring up, talk to your teacher, talk to the principal. If you can't get responses there, talk to the superintendent or send myself a note, and we'll work to take care of those issues and get it to the right people.
Yeah.
So, and Minda, I appreciate your nodding along with me back there.
Well stated, Mark.
Yeah, just to keep us on track. Okay?
Good, yep.
All right, we're on to the next item. Right, are you done? There wasn't any committee reports. You didn't have anything for finance. You mentioned it, but I don't think you had anything to report other than we're talking about the budget.
Yeah, our meeting was
Right.
about the budget, so.
Yep, so the consent agenda item, again, item number F is pulled off and put after item 4. Are there any other items, or do we need a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve.
So Ryan moves to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And since Connie's here and we don't have to unmute ourselves, Connie seconds it. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Again, minus item F. Hearing none, I'll ask you to vote. First, myself, Mark, I vote aye. Connie?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Aaron? Aaron, are you there? Sounds like an airplane. All right, we'll move on to Lori.
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
I'll come back to Aaron. Can we hear him?
Aye.
There we go. Thank you. That passed unanimously. All right, on to the next item, which is the budget discussion.
Yeah, and I'll try to bring up, Kevin, some of our stuff that we talked about with the finance committee, I guess. So if you want to let me know which, where'd they go?
Fiscal year 21?
No, do I have to share my screen? Probably I do. Can you make me the,
Should be at the, yeah, he has to give you the, yeah, Jason has to make it available to you. Jason Borgstrom. There you go. Should work now, I think. Or not?
I can't make you, I have no idea why. I can't make.
I suppose Kevin's not, is Kevin logged on? Kevin, you can share.
No, I'd have to take his plug in, Jason's.
oh, but to share on the WebEx? Are you on the WebEx?
I'm on the WebEx.
Yeah.
Because you said you called in, is that what the problem is?
Oh,
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't.
I can make Kevin.
Kevin, can you share your screen, the spreadsheet?
So you have to click, you see what I'm on right here?
Kevin is the presenter. Wonderful technology.
And while Kevin's bringing that up,
Well, I'm on a screen, but it's not the right one.
Open that, there you go.
Okay.
just want to talk about some of the decisions we have, the resolution for termination and non-renewal, May 2020. So some of those come down to some differences in we have difference in our kindergarten, anticipated. Last year right now we have 230 kindergarten students. We have 186 registered at this point. So that drops it from the 11 sections that they have now down to 9, so that's, the removal of 2 kindergarten teachers. Now, one of those has been picked up as a first grade because that large group in kindergarten is moving to first grade. There's a number of retirements that are in there, and we're trying to figure out ways so that people that are in positions aren't going to lose their jobs because they can shift one place or another place without the losing of their job, which is eaten up by the attrition of retirements. But a bulk of what we're looking at here is from 14-15 school year till now, we've been spending more than we've been bringing in for revenue, and that's hurt us. The COVID in the current state right now has affected us. So we were going to make budget cuts whether COVID came or not. The COVID's kind of magnified, I guess, that next step because of some loss of some of our fees from our fee-based programming and different things that are going to affect us through that, including lunches, community ed, coaching and player fees for spring activities, those types of things. And then going forward, we also have to prepare for the potential of what MSBA has kind of alluded to in MASBO and MASA on some of their legislative updates is the anticipation that we have a potential, next year we're set, we have 2% coming from the state, but the following year and the year after that when they do the budget next May is the 0 and 0% is what they've kind of warned us about getting to schools. And in addition to that, shift in funding where we wouldn't get our same disbursements from the state. Essentially, they're going to borrow that money from us so they can hang on to it longer and make their money from it. And then they wait or extend our payments out.
2008, 2016 that they did that?
They've
done it in past years.
In past years?
2012, I think, was the year they did that. I don't know about the other one, but
Yeah, it caused us to do basically to do short-term borrowing in order to make cash flow work.
and a lot of schools had to do that at that time, and this will probably be again. You get some good rates, but you still got to pay interest on any borrowing you do. So that's kind of what we've been looking at, I guess, as an overview. And Kevin can kind of talk about some of these differences as we look at fiscal year 21 here. And he's going to look back, I think, at some of the revised budgets and the originals.
You can see that very good.
Is your mic on, Kevin?
Yeah, okay, Pete, so if you look at the screen, there you'll see it's the projected fund balance that we're gonna start the year with next year, and I'll show you the revised for 19-20 here right after this one, but this is for fiscal year 2021, so next year. The important number that you would want to look at is the second from the last column. That's the variance. Starts out the total general fund, and it's broken down by different funds, but the total general fund, which includes any of the reserves, which are operating capital, long-term facilities maintenance, and then some assigned balances and non-spendable balances, come off of that total to come down to our, what we call the general fund unassigned, which is really available for everything else within the general fund that we spend.
And when we talk about maintaining a fund balance,
The 8% fund balance, that's the number. That roll there, that's roll 17. So when you look at that variance, what that variance means is that's the revenues over our expenditures, our revenues and financing sources over our expenditures of $645,000. So that we would end up with a projected ending balance. Now, I want to now show you the current year that we're in.
So, I have
go back
a question that kind of comes from my mind. So that means that our fund balance is going up, but we predicted that, right, based on our the bonds that, or the operating bonds that we did and those types of things, we predicted that those fund balances would be going up at this point to try to get us back up to that 8%.
To try to get
Right
us
now,
back,
we're roughly 2%, just a little bit more.
Well, I think,
there's a percentage
I
off
think-
to the side there, but,
yeah, I think, that 645 though includes some of these,
of the reductions, yeah, the
Of these
reductions
reductions.
Oh,
are,
that includes the reductions
this
that
is the
you're recommending.
reductions
Yeah,
in
so
here, yes.
the starting one of 71,776 is what we anticipate with the revised budget at the end of the
Yeah,
year.
and that's where I'll
This year.
show you this, so,
Got it.
this is
Is this where you are?
our revised budget for the current year that we're in. And if you go to that same line, that, general fund unassigned, you'll see we start out with the 175. The original budget was gonna have a variance of about 33,000, so that, minus 104,200, where that really comes from is the shortfalls that we're gonna have in food service and community ed. The learning readiness under the community ed has about a 25,000 shortfall it's gonna have. The community ed fund, the rest of the stuff, the recreation, all the other fee-based, programs that we have, about 75,000. And our food service is about a $25,000. So it's estimating about a $125,000 transfer out of the general fund, which, wasn't in there before because of the COVID, issues going on, and we're not collecting fees in those other, funds, in the community ed and food service fund. So,
So those other financing sources are transfers from the general fund?
no, the transfers are in the expenditures. The other financing sources, that was the bus that we purchased last year.
Okay.
Last July.
And these are our guesses.
Yeah, this is probably the worst-case scenario. The state has come out with the food service and said, well, just yesterday, or on Friday, said, well, we've got some other additional money that they received. They're going to, for the summer program, since the COVID-19 started, since we closed the school, went to distance learning, that all of that, we had to change actual programs. We had to apply for the summer food program. That's what we're really under right now, not the regular national lunch program. But state has said that they've got some other money, but so however meals are served under that summer food program, they're gonna take whatever the total meals served in the state, they're gonna divide up, okay, how many ever meals that is, and say they got $1 million, they would just divide each meal and give each meal that was served an additional amount. But they didn't tell us what the amount was. So we don't know what that is until after this is all done, so they'll probably...
The governor promising to make us whole is not gonna, they're gonna have some money, but it's probably not gonna make it all up.
Exactly, and there was some other money too that the federal government gave, but they were saying that was going to go based upon, how our Title I dollars, which is federal dollars, comes to the district the same way. So they said they're gonna allocate that to us that way. But again, no answers yet, don't know how much, the state's kinda in the flux too. Probably won't be till June or July that we'll actually know how much we're getting.
Are we still waiting on the waiver response for food service? As far as what people that aren't on free and reduced that are taking, whether we can charge their food accounts or we're gonna get reimbursed from the state?
We have that submitted. We submitted it when it was 50% and above, and we're at 20%.
We're at,
So, yeah, we have submitted that, so we should
Before-
get that very soon, yeah.
And they initially were, first of all, if you were over 50%, you were automatic. You were automatically approved. Then they said, okay, we're gonna look at the 30 to 50%, and they were doing that. Now they asked for the applications from everybody else, which is, we are at about 19%, what we are.
we've gotten more application. I mean, we sent out a lot of communication for that to get more applications, to get us higher numbers and.
For the free and reduced. We have received more families that have become eligible for free and reduced also. So the important one on this one, our original budget for this year was, for that variance was a $33,000 positive. So, it went down about 135,000, difference, But most of that is that $125,000 transfer going to those other funds to make them whole. And again, worst case scenario, so hopefully those other funds won't even need that whole $125,000, but I wanted to put it in there so you guys could see it, that this could be the worst case that could happen. It should really be better, hopefully.
Okay.
And there's so many variables that come into play with all of this. And I told, I've been talking to some people, this is going forward, it's the biggest known unknown that schools could have. I mean, we know something's coming down the line. We just don't know what it is, and it probably isn't gonna be good,
Yeah.
but.
And again, we won't know a lot of these things until once the audit's done, once we get through the whole year, see what the state's actually gonna give us and see where it's gonna be. That's why, with the transfer, information that the state came out with saying, you can transfer into these other fee-based program funds.
But I'll say the obvious thing. I mean, we can't plan on the state giving us any of that money. We have to plan.
Right, that's what I have in here. That's what I have in here, that they're not giving us any additional money.
And I think you were on the MSBA call when were you on the one that they said that on, or was it maybe the one before that? I don't know.
There's so many calls between the one with the governor and all the rest of them, but, I mean, it's nice for them to say, hey, we're supporting you, but it's a whole nother thing to get things through the legislature, the House and the Senate, and then get the governor to sign things that make sense, for all of us. Hopefully, they'll come through on some of these things, but to plan that, I mean, we're not allowed to operate in debt. If that happens, basically the state comes in and takes us over and forces everything back, okay? And they make changes to teacher contracts, staff contracts, all of these other things happen, statutorily. We don't want that to happen. We want to take care of our own business and plan accordingly, right? Okay. Good. Other things, Kevin?
Yeah, unless anybody else has any questions.
Questions?
And obviously, these weren't for approval, tonight. It was just part of the
Just
discussion.
Kind of plan.
To show you.
And that's why it wasn't in the packet. We weren't sure what you guys wanted, from this. If you have other questions, we can bring up other graphs and things. I did send this out to the board members that weren't here, so if they had trouble seeing it, they can open up their email and take a look at that as well.
And I just finished this one today, so.
Well, you guys are both on that finance committee, right, and with Jason Kindred?
Yeah, so.
And you guys saw this one. Oops, my screen just went out.
That's my screen, Kevin.
Oh.
What do you want?
Well, mine went out too.
You're over here.
Mine went.
I was just trying to make it larger so we could see it better from over here.
Jason, my screen just went out though.
Battery went dead. Battery went dead.
You kidding?
Which one were you bringing up?
I think I need a new battery. I've only had it off since about 5:30.
Yeah, Ryan, you were gonna say?
Yeah, when we had our finance committee meeting, Kevin and Jeremy and the three of us talked, and we knew that we had to do something. And what we talked to Kevin and Jeremy about was almost plan for DEFCON 1, if you want. Like, what is worst case scenario, what we have to do, so then we're trying to look under every rock, look at, you know, where can we be possibly as creative as possible to, preserve as much of our fund balance and plan, and assume that, especially with contracts coming up as well, having a fund balance that we can do something, because it never seems like prices for stuff go down. So, if we don't have a fund balance, we're gonna go negative anyways, just by the pure cost of inflation. So, the numbers that we were talking about were having Jeremy and Kevin come to us and say, here are all the areas that we looked at, and have a discussion. Do we want to do those? Do we?
Well, and we have some statutory requirements as far as notification of
Right.
staff and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, working with the unions and the union contracts that we have, all of those types of things, right?
Yeah, and there's some, you know, the good thing with doing it that way is planning for the worst and then hoping it doesn't happen, is in the case of even the one teacher that you approved earlier on the personnel report, one of the people that was anticipated being cut from kindergarten took that first grade position. And even going forward, as we get more students, if we can get another 15 or so, 20 students in kindergarten, that adds another teacher. The same with other grade levels that are affected from these types of things.
But we can only plan on the data that's in front of us.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And we, like I said, we have 186 kindergartners in that case. We were looking at 205 is what we were looking at. And so again, planning for the worst and hope it doesn't happen. But we can also make changes in July and August, and it's a lot easier to do it that way than it is to wait till July and August, and we can't, as of July 1st, no teachers based on the contract and the statute. We can't remove teachers after that point, and it's difficult for other staff as well.
Connie, any other input? Go ahead.
You know, I guess there are certain areas that I just wish we had maybe a couple scenarios to look at versus just one. And I know for myself, when we do budgeting, we have to provide a couple of scenarios to our council, and I'm just wondering if there are other scenarios that are possible.
Well, I guess I would say that the recommendations that we have together for you are the recommendations. It's up to you guys to approve them, or to tell me to go back to the drawing board and figure things out if we need to. One of the things I was looking at is we're at $650,000 roughly in cuts, and you know, sometimes that can affect a number of people, and so there are some that are affected, and we've gotten some feedback on some of them. But when it comes down to the positions and how we can make things work, I think that's a big piece. And as an admin team, when we met, an exec team, we talked about how we're going to fill this gap if it's created for whatever position it was. What are we going to do to fill that gap? And when we met initially, first we wanted to do this in March. March 17th, I think, was our first meeting, and March 31st was our try to finalize the meeting, but obviously that got blown out of the water. What I told the admin team is we want to look at things that are going to, how are they going to affect students? We want minimal effect on students, and then how are we going to affect live people that are working for us. And so we wanted to look at retirements and people leaving for other positions and things like that to try to buffer some of that so we weren't affecting the staff that we had already employed, and we wanted to do as much of that as we could. Obviously, when you make $650,000 worth of cuts, it's really difficult to do that for a school our size and not get into that, kind of dig into that, those live employees that we're going to have next year. We were at least planning on next year, so it makes it difficult.
Well, I mean, one of the things too, and it's really hard, I mean, these are individual people and, you know, the personalities and all that kind of stuff. It's hard for us to not want to dig in and grab, you know, why this teacher, why that position, why this one, all of that kind of stuff. But we as board members, I think, have to kind of, we're more focused on, we need to maintain the financial solvency and look at meeting our policy requirements that we've outlined as an 8%, you know, fund balance to keep us financially healthy. And we rely more on the superintendent and his, you know, his group, the administration, to make the right recommendations. You know, working with the rest of the teachers and all that kind of stuff, understanding what the potential impacts are. You know, with COVID and everything else happening, and just, you know, the things that are coming to my mind, you know, a lot of leadership of companies are taking 20% pay cuts. You know, I can see even our pastors at our church are doing a 20% tithe of their salary back to the church. That's in essence a 20% pay cut. You know, many of us are taking pay cuts and all these types of things. You know, are there other, I can't disagree with you, are there other ways that this could happen? Maybe, but we're also relying on the expertise of the staff here to come up with the best solution for us.
Yeah, yep, and we try to look at every single area as well in that, teachers, admin, we'll get some recommendations in July on some of the fees and things like that as well to increase revenue, those types of things, and looking at all the different areas. We try to take everything into account, and I meet weekly with Kevin, and each week we go through a different group, I guess, or budget code, I guess, and so we look really closely at those when we meet every week, but there's only so much of those that are flexible in many ways. Some of them are not very flexible, I would say. I don't know, Kevin can probably give us a better number, but 80 to 85% of our budget is really set, and the other 15 is something we can maneuver or shift around, and that makes it difficult as well. But like I said, we came in, the admin team, and we're given direction of how we're going to least affect students, how we're going to least affect the people on our staff, and try to do what we could for them, and how we're going to make up for when pieces are pulled out of our puzzle, how we're going to shift, because, you know, obviously with people leaving, somebody's got to pick up the slack somewhere, and we talked about those scenarios as well.
Lori, anything else to add or ask on?
No, I think it was well said, and I think we need to really continue to rely on, as a board, rely on our system, our superintendent and his cabinet, and the recommendations that they feel are necessary. I think they're strong, and we need to be really able to recognize that.
Okay. Aaron?
I got nothing to add. I agree with Lori. I think we hired Jeremy to come in and do a role, you know, and do what he sees fit.
Right. Jason?
I think the hard part is that it is individual people and it affects people in our community.
Okay. Yeah. Jason?
Yeah, there's nothing easy about this. I do appreciate the letters we've received over the last couple of days. They've provided some very good insight. It definitely doesn't make the decision-making easier. The one question I guess I have, Jeremy, is since in the time between we met as a finance committee and you bringing this material forward to the board, working with your administrative team, the principals, has there been any alternatives provided by the principals or even has the union stepped forward and provided any recommendations or alternatives to you that would work?
No, Kevin and I did talk about some alternatives, seeing if we could come up with something, and like I said, no matter what happens, if you tell me that I have to go back and find $650,000 in other cuts, then I'll go back and try to find $650,000 and come forward again, but, the inevitable part is that something has to give, to prepare us for what we don't know, I guess. And it wasn't easy. I called all the people that were affected, by the potential of losing their job and told them that this was on the table, before, and that wasn't easy phone calls to make for me, because it is a personal piece of there. But I felt like they needed to know before everyone else needed to know, that they were at least on the table.
Well, and I think that's a key aspect too, is, I mean, we want to make sure we're not doing this, in essence, behind closed doors, that we are open to the inputs that might come, and, you know, maybe somebody else has an idea where we could find $650,000. I don't know. But I think these are the things, I mean, this is why we put the finance committee together, and to try to come up with these ideas and the inputs. This is why we continue to ask the questions, are they the right things to do? You know, to make sure that we, again, as we said, we come back to fulfilling our policies that we've outlined as a board, and our goals and objectives, all those things are aligned. Yeah. Anything else to add, Jason?
Yeah, I wasn't quite done yet, thank you. So, some of the positions they're very clear. We don't have the right number of students for that age group, we don't need that many teachers. The one I think that we all are aware of, the biggest concern that's been raised is the change in the leadership at the intermediate school. I guess the couple of things, Jeremy, just for the group, what's the difference between having an assistant principal and having a dean of students? What impact would we foresee on the intermediate school from that change? Not the specifics of the person in that job, because I understand from the letters we've received, it brings a lot to the table, but just the functional area of changing that functional area, what would we anticipate as the impact being?
Yeah, I'll start with less days. Typically, the dean of students has less working days than an assistant principal. Then there are some legal things that a dean of students is unable to do that a principal or somebody with an administrative license and title is able to do. Among those are evaluations of staff, of certified staff, suspension of students, and so those are probably the two biggest ones. There are a couple other smaller ones that probably are out there as well, but those are the biggest changes that we would have if we went from an AP to a dean of students that we wouldn't be able to do. There's also, the dean of students is on the teacher contract, has a teacher on special assignment, and so they have a little bit different side of their negotiations, I guess, because it's part of the teachers group and not the admin group, and so that's a little bit of a difference as well. And essentially, they aren't able to lead teachers then in some ways because they're at the same level as them in that way. So an admin can come in and you know, tell a teacher what to do in some cases.
Provide direction.
Yep, and provide direction. And they can still work as staff development and things like that, just like any teacher can do staff development training and things for staff, but they just don't have, I guess, as much power in some things.
Is the money saved in that position really because of in essence, the number of hours is less? Is that really the reason for the money?
That's part of it, and then the contract is the other part, you know, so the insurance benefits aren't quite as high, you know, there's some
teacher contract
differences.
versus an admin contract.
Yep, yep. The daily rate of pay is probably a little bit lower, but not, because this person, whoever is a dean of students, typically has a master's degree plus, a lot of times, an admin degree in itself, and so they're at the far right. They've usually got experience, and they are given that. So at the bottom right, typically of a teacher contract, and then you just add on the number of days that you need them, essentially. So, yeah, so a bulk of that savings is just the number of days worked.
Jason?
When does this decision have to be finalized and communicated?
The teachers have to be done by July 1, because these are all probationary teachers that are on our list. So state statute says July 1. There's nothing in the contracts that is contrary to that, otherwise we'd have to abide by that. Teachers are supposed to get the right of their assignment 60 days prior to the end of the school year, or as soon thereafter is what it says in our contract. So my other thought is that, I guess July 1 is the one it has to be by, but my other thought is the sooner you make that decision, the sooner they can move on, the sooner you can start making adjustments. If you need to call them back, if numbers grow or certain things change, we have the opportunity to call them back as well, but the sooner you make those calls, typically, the more beneficial it is to those people. I think I've been budget cut 3 or maybe 4 times in my teaching career, and it's never easy, but when I knew in March or February, it was a lot easier for me to get a teaching job, and even now, knowing early May, they have a chance to apply for some teaching jobs and things elsewhere.
I understand that, and I don't want to draw it out. I guess I'm just clinging to some small hope that somebody might bring other alternate suggestions forward, but I don't really, in my heart, feel that that's going to happen. So I don't in any way want to appear that I'm undermining your recommendation, because I think it's solid, Jeremy. I'm just processing the flood of feedback we got about the one specific position. So that's good. It's good that people are reaching out and engaging. So it just makes it a little more difficult on us, but that's what we're here for. I'm done. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else around the table here? Anything else from anybody else? Questions on budget?
Just a formality
Yep.
question. If we want to adjust the recommendation, how do we do that?
You'd probably create 2 resolutions, so the resolution has everyone's name on it.
Right.
To adjust it, you'd want to do 2 separate votes, probably, I would guess. If it's 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, you can do everyone separate, I suppose, but I think that would be easy.
Well, what I was going to say is I want to pull the assistant principal off and have a separate vote. That's the only recommendation that I am struggling with.
I am too.
Ryan, I cannot hear you. Can you talk better and more clearly into the microphone?
Sorry, Lori. What I was saying is what is the process to adjust the recommendation of the budget cuts? My position is I would like to have a separate vote on the assistant principal position. I personally am struggling with that specific cut.
And so am I.
All right. So, I mean, I understand what you're asking. I'm trying to figure out from a board standpoint. We've talked about what the board's role is in this versus the administration's role in this. So what?
Mark, I'm having trouble hearing you as well.
All right. Hopefully this is coming through. I'll try to speak more at the microphone here, and hopefully that works well.
That's better. Thank you.
Yeah. So we can certainly divide, what we may call is divide the question, and have, you know, the full resolution with all of the names except for one, have the second one would be a decision on that. Before we do something like that, though, I'm trying to figure out from a board policy standpoint, what justifies us taking a specific action for one position and not having, in essence, 5 or 6 or whatever, however many separate individual votes on each of those positions. Just from again, I'm trying to understand that from a board policy standpoint, not trying to get in, because we generally don't get involved in the individual administration of any building, much less an individual position.
And I totally respect that. The only thing that I get, because my struggle is I think that one is administrative, the rest are teachers. So I guess I didn't understand why they would be lumped together anyways.
Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, so principals are considered teachers by statute. When you define a principal, they're considered a teacher, so they're on the same seniority list essentially. Now, all these people on our resolution are probationary staff, but when you get into, if cuts were made into non-probationary staff and we place them on ULA, so let's say Mr. Christensen at the elementary school, we cut all the principals, and we cut Dale at the primary school, he would have the opportunity, because of seniority, to bump, I'm sure, somebody below him in his licensure area. And so the classification of a principal is a teacher as far as seniority and cuts are made. And so they do have different contracts, but when you look at the seniority list, it kind of, they're all in the same boat. So if
According to the state.
according to the state, yep, definition, I guess, I think is what it's.
So in other words, if an assistant principal were to be cut, they would have an opportunity to become a teacher if they had the tenure and seniority.
Yes.
We couldn't just end that contract. They would have the opportunity to become a teacher before they could be terminated out of the district, because they're no longer probationary. So you have the 3-year window, or
3 year, or 1 year if they've already done their 3-year probationary period. They've got 3 years, 3 years probationary period in any one district, and then if they move districts, they have to do a 1-year probationary period.
And so that's why this group, and it's almost always the first group that's cut, is that probationary thing, because we don't have to go through the teacher contracts and union contracts in order to be able to make those cuts. So that's why those particular things are being looked at, because these positions are still in a probationary status. It's kind of our first area of cuts as a district. So that's from a board policy standpoint, that's why probationary is that group that is cut. Okay?
Yeah,
So it doesn't differentiate between admin, teachers, that kind of stuff. It's just they're a probationary group.
Yeah, and the difference between probationary and ULA, tenured staff in this case, or non-probationary, is a probationary teacher you do not have to give any reason to unless they ask for it in writing. If it's a non-probationary staff member, then you have to give them some type of reason, and those are defined in the statute, and they're defined in our contract as well. It has to be cut of the program, or budgetary, or failure to do their job type of stuff.
So it's basically an all or nothing deal.
Well, you could still pull, if like you said, the AP position is there, but what Mark is saying is that as a board,
from a board policy standpoint,
that's what it goes.
I would say that. But I mean, we have wide range to do what you want to do. If that's we're past the budgetary thing, so we're on to the next agenda item, which is the resolution relating to termination, non-renewal of teacher contracts.
This,
So the first order of business would be get a motion to approve that resolution? Somebody?
Look, can I ask one more question?
Okay, I'll move this resolution. Is there a second? We can't.
I'll second.
Okay, so Lori seconds it. I was gonna say, we can't move forward with the discussion until we get a motion and a second on any part of this. Okay, so now that the full resolution is in front of us, what would be in order, and I can suggest, is if there is any piece of this that you want a separate discussion on, you can move what's called dividing the question for that thing. So, is there a motion to divide the question?
Also move.
Okay, so Ryan moves the division of the question to move the assistant principal position to a separate discussion, separate question.
Yes.
And I'll second.
Okay, and there's a second. Okay. So is there any discussion on that motion for division?
So to be clear, we're still in discussion. We're not ready to vote on the resolution.
No? And so to be clear, what this motion in essence does, it divides the resolution into now two resolutions. Okay, one that has the assistant principal on it, and one that has all of the other probationary teachers on it. Okay, and that is a separate motion by itself, not passing the resolutions at all. It's just a motion for division. Okay, if this motion were to pass, then we would have those two separate resolutions. If this motion fails, we go back to the main thing where it's just one resolution for all of them. Does that make sense? You can say yes if it doesn't.
I have no question.
Go ahead.
No question.
No questions. Okay, so again, I would say from a board policy standpoint, this is not a good thing to do. I would ask that you vote against this type of a motion to separate these two things. Okay? And that's just my opinion. Vote how you need to vote. Okay? Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none on the motion of dividing the question, each person vote in turn. So I, Mark Swanson, vote no. Okay, and I'll ask Aaron.
No.
Lori.
I vote no.
Jason.
No.
Connie.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Okay, the noes prevail, that motion does not pass. We are back to a single motion with one resolution. Okay, is there any discussion on the resolution related to the teacher contracts?
Yes, one question, just for clarity in my mind, please.
Go ahead.
If we were to remove any name, sorry, I'm getting a bunch of background noise. If we were to remove any name from this list, there's no place else to cut positions because everyone else is tenured, correct?
That would not be accurate.
No, that is not correct. No.
So there are other non-tenured teachers that could be cut,
Or
but those are
administration.
recommended for retention because we have a need in those areas, probably.
Yes.
So there are other non-probationary
understand.
teachers that are being retained.
Or admin.
Or, yeah, and admin as well, yes.
Other
Other
probationary
probationary teachers, yeah.
that are being retained. So for instance, I can only imagine, because, well, I mean, we had a lot of turnover in admin, middle school, maybe high school, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the number, like, off the top of my head.
Is that because I don't know what you guys talked about at the,
For administration, yeah, there's a lot of non-tenured, I guess.
non-tenured
Okay.
or probationary.
My question was answered, thank you.
Okay? Other questions, Ryan? Or discussion? Lori? Or Aaron? Okay, hearing none, voting now on the resolution relating to this termination and on renewal. Start again and say, Mark votes yes. Aaron?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Connie?
No.
Brian?
No.
Okay. The vote is 4-2 and the resolution passes with those noted, that noted vote. That is all part of the resolution, has to be done in writing. Okay? Sorry, just getting back to the agenda. Okay, the next item is the discussion on graduation planning and a potential special meeting for high school graduation planning.
Yes, I would like to have a meeting, hopefully on May 18th, a Monday, 2 weeks from today, to finalize our graduation plans and get a recommendation. Currently we have a committee made up of students and admin, Mr. Kraft and Mr. Balloon, who are trying to create plans for graduation. The students are seniors, and I'd like to first say I think May 22nd is off the table for graduation, and they're coming up with a variety of options. I did meet with them last week in their meeting. I participated in their meeting for the first part of it while I could, and they're going to start getting some ideas and things, and we have been asked by MDE to send those in to get them either approved or denied by public health. And MDE is supposed to send us guidance on graduation ceremonies this week from their communications, because some schools are graduating as early as next week, at the end of next week. And so what I would like to do is have a May 18th meeting, and we could hopefully have a plan in place by then. One of the ideas I gave to Mr. Kraft, as he leads those meetings, is to push it out as far as possible. So hopefully some of these restrictions are lifted at that point, and we can have a normal ceremony. But if not, if we're not able to have the stay-at-home orders and all these distancing guidelines and things like that lifted, we need to do something on whatever date we choose, is what my recommendation to him was. I do not want to, again, my recommendation is not to schedule it for June 7th, and then June 10th, and then June 15th, and keep postponing it until the governor lifts, or CDC lifts these requirements that they're asking us to follow. So I said push out as far as we can, and keeping in mind that we want all the students, number one, to be there, as many as we can get to be there. Their family, very important, but we want the students first and foremost to be able to make it as much as possible. And if we get family there, we get them there. If not, we don't. And then the friends, I don't know if we'll get friends there or not. But again, it depends on the guidelines from the CDC. So I guess what I'm asking for is a May 18th meeting. I can answer your question here, but a May 18th meeting we'll finalize those plans for that. And there may be some other things that come into play there as well.
I'm confused at what's being asked for, Jeremy, so I'm sorry to, I'm just confused.
Yeah, no recommendation.
This is a May 18 meeting of the board, or just a May 18 meeting of the committee? Why is this before the board?
Because you guys have to participate in graduation.
And we actually have to set the date, and if we're changing the date from the 22nd, we need to have a special meeting in order to do that, because the board actually formally does approve the graduation of the class. So that actually is board business, that makes sense. Not that, that we wouldn't go along with, again, similar things on recommendation and what's coming from that committee and those types of things, or that we would want to override them. It's just that legally MDE puts us in charge of doing that.
So is it a subcommittee of the board, or is it a
No, this
meeting
would
of?
be
I think the whole
this would
board.
be a special board meeting.
Okay.
You know, the board and the clerk have the power to set a special board meeting, but I asked Jeremy to bring this in front of the board because it is such a big deal from a public standpoint, from, you know, the things that are going on in our community.
So the real resolution here is, we want to have a meeting on the 18th.
Yeah, there's no vote or anything, it just, if we can
Well-
make the 18th, we can make the 18th, and then we vote on that date. I don't think you have to approve to have a special meeting.
Nothing at this
Yeah.
But,
Okay.
and I guess, you know, personally, I would like your input. I don't want to just set a meeting on the 18th, assuming that all of the board members can make it. You know, I'd rather hear from you at this point if the 18th is an acceptable date for a special meeting.
Yeah, and why we picked that date is because we're gonna get feedback from MDE this week, hopefully. They've been delayed on some of their feedback, so we may get it next week. The committee also wants to meet again before they give us some type of ideas and recommendations, and so the 18th was as soon as we could do it.
And the
At the latest as
22nd
well.
is currently the date set for graduation,
Yeah.
so we need to be before that, obviously. So,
I can make the 18th work.
Mark, I can make the 18th work.
all right, thank you. Lori?
The 18th works for me.
Connie?
Yep, that works.
Yep.
Super.
Thank you. So we will set a special board meeting for, May 18th at 6:30.
You wanna do it at 6:30? Okay.
Fine with me.
Okay. May 18th at 6:30.
Yeah, that'll be good. I'm excited for some of their ideas and things. It's a good group of kids, first of all, and I think they're gonna be pretty creative.
Yeah.
Come up with a plan A and plan B and maybe a plan C.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of other questions out there. Prom?
Guys, I don't want to be rude, but we're going on past 2 hours now.
Yep.
Yeah. Prom is off for now. I don't anticipate having that unless people want to do their individual thing or something, but.
Okay. If there are any other questions about other things, again, please email them to the appropriate principal, teacher, you know, or get those to the board. Jason, like Jason said, we appreciate the board input. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.